Okay, big breaking news story coming in the last couple of minutes or so, and it's a big one because it's about Triple H being back in his executive position involving talent relations in WWE. We're going to be talking about this, the ramifications, what it means about Vince McMahon, Bruce Pritchard, John Laurinaitis, Nick Khan, and more in this developing WWE news story. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of WWE, and this is a big one. It's about Triple H resuming, easy for me to say, his position as Executive Vice President of Talent Relations in WWE. WWE kind of surprised everyone with this. They released a press release about an hour ago at the time of recording right now. I wanted to wait just a few minutes or so because I thought there might be some reactions, some comments from a lot of people, and there are regarding Triple H. WWE released the following press release saying, quote, Paul Triple H Levesque is back, which is funny because that's what he said. Not like that. That's what he said when he visited the WWE Performance Center a couple of weeks ago. Right at the end of June, there was this report that he had said at the Performance Center, I'm back, and a lot of people read into that many different ways, and then people backed off those reports, but WWE has confirmed. This is what they have said in the press release. WWE today announced that effective immediately, Paul Levesque will resume his executive position as Executive Vice President of Talent Relations. Triple H said, quote, I look forward to returning to my prior position as head of talent relations. I'm healthy, fired up, and ready to take charge, said Levesque. Now, of course, this is very interesting because it comes off the back of John Laurinaitis, who was the previous Executive Vice President of Talent Relations, being placed on administrative leave. Of course, that was about these hush money payments by Vince McMahon and Laurinaitis, but the payments were done by Vince McMahon going to former WWE employees in which Laurinaitis and McMahon had affairs with. Now, it was the end of last month. I've got a couple of stories up in front of me here. It was the end of last month. There was a memo to talents prior to a Monday Night Raw announcing that Senior Vice President Bruce Pritchard would be taking over as the interim head of talent relations effective immediately, but today's press release would suggest now, Triple H is going to be in that role now full-time, which is a good thing because, let's face it, Bruce Pritchard, he's the executive director of both Raw and SmackDown. He's head of creative in WWE. The last thing he needs is to also be the head of talent relations. Frankly, he shouldn't be the executive director of both shows anyway. That job's too big. I mean, when he was first, he wasn't even one of the original executive directors. He was just a senior vice president in the company. It was Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff as the executive directors of both shows. Heyman for Raw, Bischoff for SmackDown. And then Bischoff got fired. Bruce Pritchard became the executive director for SmackDown. Heyman got restructured in the company, and then Bruce Pritchard became the executive director of both shows. And then he was the interim head of talent relations. It was just too much. It was way, way, way too much. Now, as I mentioned, John Laurinaitis is on administrative leave in light of the allegations made against him and Vince McMahon. The memo prior to Monday Night Raw last month stated that Laurinaitis would not be on the road with WWE, and he hasn't been, as is the same way that Vince McMahon currently is. That was the situation when it came to that. Now, when it comes to Triple H, of course, why this is significant is because he had a major health scare last summer, which saw him suffer a cardiac event caused by a genetic heart condition. Now, this incident ultimately led Levesque to retiring from in-ring competition, which he signified at WrestleMania 38 earlier this year by placing his wrestling boots in the middle of the ring. Although back in the thick of things behind the scenes, Levesque had not actually been back in Orlando, Florida until last month when he had this meeting at the Performance Center and said that he was back. Now, it must be said, Dave Meltzer, at the end of last month, also said that Levesque was always going to be coming back to a bigger role. That was always the plan, and it had nothing to do with the Vince McMahon, John Laurinaitis scandal at the moment. I think, take that with a pinch of salt. Maybe that had always been the plan, but certainly the situation in WWE has absolutely expedited things. I think that's probably fair to say with everything that's going on at the moment in WWE. I think it has expedited things, and with Stephanie McMahon being the chairwoman, the interim chairwoman and CEO of the company, has that sped things up? I don't know. But ultimately, it's a good thing. Triple H, as the head of talent relations in WWE, during that period of time in which he was the head of recruitment and head of talent relations, they were bringing in lots of different talents. They were bringing in talents that hadn't got a shot previously. Now, this isn't to say with Triple H being back in the fold in this position, that they're going to start hiring people from the indies again, and they're going to veer away from the WWE image that they reverted back to last year, because Triple H was part of those plans anyway. He was going to be part of those plans. He was going to see the transition of NXT Black and Gold to NXT 2.0. He just had this health scare, and it had meant that he had to take a back seat. So I don't suspect that we're going to see this massive radical change because Triple H is back in this role. I think it's a good thing because clearly it means his health issues are behind him. There was some concern about him coming back of, well, can he ever come back in the capacity that he came back before? Of course, he's not going to be wrestling again, and he was coming to the end of his career anyway. But the big concern was, would he be up to physically the hustle and bustle of everyday WWE life? We know how intense that role is. We know how intense that company is. We know the workload. We know the stress that it puts on the body. Would he ever be able to go back to that? And it would appear that he is, or certainly you would hope him stepping back into this role that he is able to. So that's a positive sign. I think it's also a positive sign because from what I've read, and I'm no one with inside information here, folks, but from what I've read, talent liked him. We know his relationships with several talents in the past, and a lot of the talent still currently on the WWE roster looks up to Triple H because he was the one that brought him in the first place. He was the one that nurtured him back in the NXT days. So the fact that Triple H would be on a day-to-day basis liaising with these talents if they have issues or if they're being brought into the company, that seemingly would be a good thing for them, and that would be a good thing for WWE. And I think it's a bit of positive news. You could look at it in several ways, and you could be one of these people that say, actually, Owen, come on, with the string of negative PR that's been going on in WWE right now, they want a little bit of positive PR, and that could be true as well. That must be said. That could absolutely be a situation where they're looking to try and find something positive in a situation where it's quite negative at the moment with WWE. That's also fair. But I think the positive certainly to take out of it, again, is that Triple H is healthy, that Bruce Pritchard isn't in that role because he shouldn't be. He's the guy's had 2 heart attacks in his life. So let's replace him with another guy that's had his issues. I understand that, but he just shouldn't be in that role. And it is interesting now to look at that corporate structure in WWE. This is a very fascinating time, and the sharks are circling, and everyone's reaching for power, and everyone wants to gain power that previously they thought they wouldn't have. WWE's executive level is a very vulnerable and open state at the moment, which it has never been. Ultimately, it's always been the buck stops at Vince McMahon, and it still does. Make no mistake, just because he's not the chairman and CEO right now, I still suspect that he, in his mind, certainly, all of this will blow over and he'll go back into the role he was. And he is still head of creative. He still determines exactly what appears on WWE programming every single week. And until he is forced out of his own company, that will be the case. And he's appeared on television as well several times since then. So make no mistake, Vince is still in charge. But you've got this structure now where you've got Vince having, let's say, less power, but I don't know how real that is. But Vince's authority being somewhat reduced, or certainly the biggest crack ever we've seen in it, certainly in modern WWE history, is there right now. And you've got people like Nick Khan, who over the course of the last 18 months have been circling and gaining more power more and more, forcing Triple H's people out of the company, maybe nearly forcing Stephanie out of the company as well, because of course she was going to go on hiatus. But now the crack's there with Vince. Stephanie's the interim CEO and chairwoman. Triple H is now back in his executive role with his executive duties, and he has now more power than he did previously, or certainly over the course of the last year. So there is a lot going on in that WWE power struggle, and it's a fascinating time. And whilst they can claim that it has nothing to do with what's going on with Vince McMahon and John Laurinaitis right now, clearly it does, because he's taking over a role that John Laurinaitis had previously. So of course it's involved in that, and whether this was a Stephanie call, whether this was always part of the plan, I guess we'll find out in the coming weeks. But certainly it's good news for Triple H. It's good news, I think, for WWE. And I think it's good news for talent. Talent had their, clearly, massive issues with John Laurinaitis, and people weren't happy to see him back in that role anyway. And talent were less than thrilled for Bruce Pritchard to be back on an interim basis as well. So Triple H being back in that, I think is good for talent, I think it's good for WWE, and I think it's good for Triple H as well. So certainly a fascinating news story. Let me know your thoughts on this developing news story in the comment section below. Be sure to like and subscribe to Wrestle News 365, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.